Well, good morning and welcome back to the Broadcast Retirement Network. I'm Jeff Snyder. This is BRN AM for Thursday, January 30th, 2020. And here are our top stories. National fallout from the Delaware Attorney General ruling, and how do you keep on track with your 2020 resolutions? Joining me now to discuss this and a lot more, Ann Tergeson, retirement reporter with the Wall Street Journal. Ann, welcome back to the program.
Thanks very much.
So yesterday we featured the Treasurer of Delaware who discussed a ruling by the Attorney General on some bad behavior by an investment advisor. I want to get your sense of what's going on, not necessarily just with Delaware, but across the country. What can you tell us?
Well, I think it's very interesting. Basically the Securities and Exchange Commission seems to be looking into 403B practices, which I think is really very interesting. SEC Chairman Jay Clayton has been on record saying he's concerned about, some aspects of these plans. And then in New York State, we saw that the New York State Insurance Department also launched an investigation of some of the insurance companies involved in this market. And now we're seeing Delaware take action against Horace Mann most recently. So, is it something? Is it a sign of some kind of national crackdown? Well, I think the SEC investigation by itself is. It seems like these state actions, particularly the one in Delaware, was certainly something that was responding to a situation that arose there.
Yeah, I'm wondering, Ann, just obviously you are on the beat, and this is just a point in public sector, although maybe a little bit slow, but also mirrors what had previously happened in the private sector. And I'm wondering, does this spur, again, this is your opinion, but does this spur more activity in that regard to seek more consolidation?
I don't know. I mean, in 403B, and you probably would know better than me. I mean, maybe in 457, where I feel like, at least there's sort of a strong association, NAGDA, and, maybe states like to look at what each other are doing. But in 403B, I feel like it's such a fragmented market. And what Delaware did here, I found was really very interesting. And I mean, I haven't done any kind of national kind of census of 403B plans, but I haven't seen this elsewhere. So I was really kind of fascinated by it.
Yeah, I agree. And I think a little bit from a governance perspective, the state of Delaware has oversight, to your point, over the 403B plans that the teachers use. Many nationally, that's not always the case, Ann. I mean, there are different localities, different districts have control. And so there are many, it's very dispersed. And so it's very hard to kind of make significant changes. But I just wonder if it kind of wakes people up a little bit. You did considerable writing on this topic. You've talked about other aspects of these searches. And I wonder if it just kind of wakes people up. You're nationally regarded in terms of what you write. People take heed of it. And I'm wondering if that, on top of this Delaware ruling and what the state attorney general is doing in New York and the SEC, wakes people up to more activity.
I mean, it would be great if it were to happen. I have to say, the market is definitely seems to me to be in need of some stricter kind of oversight. It would not be a bad thing. So, I mean, what Delaware did in consolidating to a single vendor for both the 457 and 403B plan, I mean, why not, right? You get the economies of scale that are enormously lacking in 403B. So
yeah, absolutely. I think when on the face, and having been intimately involved with that particular case, there are definitely economies of scale, but there are always, in any market, there are always, I wouldn't say winners and losers, but there are definitely people who would have attrition in terms of their assets. And so you could potentially, losing out on assets and losing out on revenue has an impact. There are certainly companies that maybe did not stand to gain and therefore needed to take some level of action. And you see these bad actors. And I got to believe, and this is just anecdotal, I got to believe that this is taking place, that some of this bad behavior is taking place in other places in this country.
Yeah, no, it's interesting in the Delaware case. Seemed like a very clear cause and effect that the 403B plan went from 13 vendors, which included Horace Mann, to one vendor, which was Voya, which was consolidated with the 457 plan. All of a sudden, those other 12, or I don't know, maybe Voya wasn't a pre-existing vendor. I don't know. You would know.
Yeah, I think they were. They were.
They were. Okay, so those other 12 vendors, including Horace Mann, basically got cut out. And so the solution that this one broker who was affiliated with Horace Mann came up with was to convince, his clients who were teachers to open IRAs, fund those IRAs with, of course, Horace Mann annuities, and stop contributing to the 403B plan, which, is it's interesting because a lot of consumer advocates who say, that they have clients or friends who have 403B plans with nothing but high cost kind of, options that they don't believe is in the best interest of the consumer, that these people often, advise them to open IRAs with a Vanguard or a Fidelity. But this is sort of taking that same thought process and turning it on its head and saying, hey, rather than go into a 403B with low costs, please come to the IRA with so you can preserve my commissions.
Yeah, and right, and I want to say that we had the defeat of the fiduciary rule by a lot of different entities a couple of years ago. Different administration, new administration comes in, maybe they want to rewrite things. I know that the Securities and Exchange Commission is also looking at Reg BI and some other regulations, but it seems to me that we clearly need some accountability. I mean, kudos to the team at Delaware, kudos to the team at the Attorney General's office and in other places for bringing this up, but you can't regulate everything and all the behavior. There clearly needs to be accountability and stiff penalties here.
I know. It's kind of mind-boggling to me how, within ERISA, within, for 401k plans under ERISA, you get this kind of strict accountability and you get litigation when there's been a sense of potential violation. But, in this other world, it just seems like there's really no, at least in 403B, it seems like there's no, in some cases, no central fiduciary who's really watching out. The school districts aren't really embracing that role, and probably for obvious reasons, they don't want the liability, but nobody's really stepping in there.
Yeah, and the IRS, I mean, these new 403B rules came into place 1/1/2009. They went through the proposal process that we've covered on this program numerous times with the legal eagles. And there have been changes. I mean, we saw changes in the private sector, but to your point, there are not fiduciary rules, and ERISA does not govern these public sector plans, but there are, on occasion, state and local laws that do mirror ERISA. And so It's important to know those statutes, but it just seems like a no-brainer. And again, I'm not an attorney. You're not an attorney. At least I'm not aware that you're an attorney.
No.
And we don't have insight into ERISA and why or why not. But it just seems logical to me, at least, that these same rules that apply over here would apply over here, because you have the same end game, which is retirement income, getting people saving, and fees are a big part of that.
Right, exactly. And you've seen litigation in the ERISA governed section of the 403B market. I'm not saying that litigation is a good thing, but it is a good thing to have a sense that there's somebody out there who could counteract potential abuses if they occur. And again, I'm not opining on what I think of the 403B litigation there, but I'm just saying that you do get those kind of checks and balances a little bit more when you have some kind of, ERISA type of governance.
Yeah, absolutely. Well, and more to come on that. When we come back, we're going to talk to Ann about ways that you can continue on the path to meeting your financial goals in 2020. So stay tuned right here on BRN AM. Imagine a new television network that will make you richer, healthier, and in control of your financial future. This network is for the policewoman in Nashville, Tennessee, the baker in Dubuque, Iowa, the teacher in Lexington, Kentucky. We want to make the idea of savings and retirement culturally relevant. But what do you see as a defining issue of the midterms? Especially for the smaller businesses. I mean, they are the lifeblood of the American economy. Featuring exclusive interviews, current affairs, and docuseries. 33 years old, you retired early.
The philosophy is money only matters if it helps you live a life that you love.
But you got to start thinking about retirement as soon as you get in.
The Broadcast Retirement Network will drive very high engagement with premium partnerships. So this isn't retirement and savings for your parents or grandparents. This is for all Americans. And we're going to change the way you think about money. Welcome to the next frontier of retirement and savings. This is BRN, the Broadcast Retirement Network. Welcome back. We're talking to Ann Turgeson. She's a retirement reporter with the Wall Street Journal. Ann, thanks so much for staying with us this morning.
Oh, you're welcome.
It's great to have you and get your opinion. So you wrote a piece on ways that people can stay on track based on the study. People can stay on track on their financial New Year's resolutions. And I got to tell you, Ann, so many people that I know, they think that they're going to exercise, they join the gym, they're going to balance their budget, all these things. And by here we are, January 30th, and those things are out the door. But you did a piece on this. What can you tell us here?
Yeah, I'm also in that boat. I think that it's fascinating to me because, yes, I cover finance and I cover retirement. So I'm very focused on things like savings rates and, good financial behaviors. But when you think about it, around New Year's time, it's very prevalent. People kind of look at their diets, they look at their exercise patterns, they look at their finances. It's all the same kind of thing. So I feel like the research that I read is sort of applicable very broadly, no matter what your goal is. But yeah, I mean, it's a phenomenon where I think in December, according to this research, what happens is there's this sort of an effect of New Year's coming. It's a brand new year. It's a chance to kind of turn the page, turn over a new leaf. There's going to be a whole new me is sort of the thinking. And so motivation is extremely high, before New Year's. And also this tends to happen before birthdays. Just some sense of, this new year means a new me. So people get very motivated and they enact these goals. And then invariably what you're describing happens, just a couple weeks later, maybe a couple months later, they find that they're not really adhering to them or not really progressing towards the goals anymore. They've stopped going to the gym. They've kind of shelved their plans to do a financial plan or whatever. So I just tried to delve a little bit into the research on, ways to sort of not only set those goals, because I think people are very motivated around that time, but to actually like put in place a plan to make it happen, which I think is where we all fall down on that job.
Yeah, absolutely. It's almost like I remember reading a book by Professor Milton Friedman. And chapter 2 is called Free to Choose. And chapter 2 was the tyranny of the status quo. And of course, he was referring to government. But I think there is the case where, the status quo, it works. It's comfortable. And kind of reverting back to that, all of us. And you could be the highest achiever. Getting out of your comfort zone is terribly difficult for people. But let's go back to the research and talk about some ways you can mitigate this and hopefully overcome this. And I got to think some of this starts with expectations, maybe.
Yeah, I think that, often we'll do things like say, I'm going to save more for retirement. Okay, so that's kind of an amorphous goal, right? Right there is a problem. Or somebody will say something like, I'm going to lose 40 pounds, within 2 months, or the financial equivalent, I'm going to retire when I'm 38, or something like that. These goals are either like way unrealistic on the one hand, or they can be like too amorphous on the other hand. What does that mean? I'm going to save more for retirement. So, the first step for all this is just to set kind of very specific and also very ultimately realistic goals. So instead of saying I'm going to lose 40 pounds by March 1st, I'm going to maybe try to lose, 4 pounds by March 1st or 3 pounds or whatever's realistic given your body weight in the financial realm. I'm currently saving 5% for retirement. I know I need to get to 15%. I'm going to go in and program a 2 percentage point increase for this year when I get my annual raise. Something concrete, specific, realistic is the first step.
Yeah, I think that makes a lot of sense. And going back to like the, just the analogy of losing weight, also recognizing that if you work out and are gaining muscle, that might not necessarily translate into weight. So it's also how you measure things, I would imagine. And, our show's not about losing or gaining weight, although that is a positive step and will help you with your mortality and living longer, and therefore you need more money. But I think setting realistic goals and expectations, and then I got to think monitoring those goals over a long period of time have to make sense.
Right. So I think the next step is also just to make like a more detailed plan. I mean, sometimes if you have a goal, it can be pretty straightforward. Like what I described, I'm going in and I'm going to save 2 percentage points more this year. But if your goal is to go from 5% savings to 15%, then that's something that probably has to be achieved over a longer period of time, unless you really want to put yourself into financial shock, which is often a recipe for, like abandoning the plan. So, maybe you go and you talk to HR, you see if the plan has like a save more tomorrow component, automatic escalation, whatever you want to call it. And you program those increases to occur, every year or every other year over a long period. You think about what's realistic, you sit down, you crunch the numbers. You do that while motivation's high, you go in and you try to enact that plan. In that case, it's quick through HR and some kind of, 401k portal. With other things, it can be more complicated. Like, for example, like going to the gym. A lot of people don't like to do that. I happen to love it, but a lot of people don't like it. So some things that can really help there are to, some people even go so far as to like sleep in their gym clothes so that they're just ready to go in the morning. Or, I put my sneakers right next to the front door. So it's sort of a cue. It's just an automatic thing. There's another fascinating study that I loved by a professor at Wharton, where she and a colleague found that when they gave people audiobooks that were only available at the gym, or even that people had on their phones and took with them to the gym, but they listened to these sort of not trashy, but kind of fun audiobooks, not War and Peace, but so that this was an activity that they did while they were working out, that the compliance with working out went much higher. Or she said, you can stream television shows. It's some kind of guilty pleasure that you wouldn't ordinarily allow yourself like a half an hour to sort of sit and watch some TV show. Do it at the gym, and that can motivate you to go. So it's like trying to actually come up with ways that are going to work for you to actually implement this. So those are some examples.
Yeah, I think good examples. And I think if you're a human resources manager or a member of a benefits committee, these are techniques and things that you can think about when you're communicating to an employee or participant in a retirement plan. And if you're someone who's listening, who's just a consumer, someone who's just trying to save, these are things techniques that you can utilize to incentivize yourself. And we can try to do these things, but a lot of it is self-determination, and they have to put in a little bit of effort. It sounds like you don't necessarily have to put in 100% of effort, but you can put in a little bit of effort. And it sounds like you don't have to just push aside and go to the extremes. I think you use the extreme of like retiring at age 30 or 35 and like going all in and just living out of your car. That's an extreme. I think extreme behaviors are harder or giving up coffee or giving up Starbucks. If you like something, try to do it in moderation.
Right. I think people take different approaches, and I certainly have like a relative in particular who just has to give it up. Like he can't do moderation. I'm somebody who does moderation. So I think it pays to kind of know yourself a little bit, and it pays to go through some different behavioral strategies. There's a whole bunch, like I described the one about the audiobooks in the gym, but there's sort of like another phase of this whole planning, which is the stress testing, right? So you have to think about what are the obstacles to making this happen, right? So, maybe you get a bonus and it's too tempting just to spend the whole thing. So what are the ways that in advance you can sort of, pledge to save X percent of your bonus? And maybe there are ways you can get your employer to, to help you out with that regard, or within the scope of like, I'm going to eat better, right? I mean, the classic thing is, well, I'm actually starving. I've stayed way too late at work and I'm just going to eat whatever's in front of me.
Yeah.
So you have to think about like, what happens when this doesn't go well? How can I strategize? And if you can put plans in place for those scenarios, that's when I think your odds of success really go up, because everything, as long as everything functions properly, it's fine. But it's when things don't function properly that we're under stress. We just fall back on our old ways.
And is this part of the financial literacy program should this be part of the financial literacy program that states, schools, colleges are putting into place? Like it's not enough just to understand the basics, the budgeting. Those are important things, but also how to manage who you are and manage to achieving goals. It sounds like this really needs to be part of those literacy steps as well. It needs to be all baked in. Human behavior needs to be baked into some of those classes.
I know, it's interesting. I think that's probably true. And I think, when you think about like, PE classes, gym classes in high schools, and, this certainly could be a part of those types of classes as well. So these sort of overall strategies that can work for either financial wellness or, health and physical wellness. I find them fascinating, and I think I've been using some of them, in kind of implementing my goals, my New Year's resolutions for this year, and I feel like I've had a lot more success sticking with things. Another really important thing is to reward yourself for small wins. So, okay, if you're saving an extra $100 a month, maybe you put aside 10% of that into I get to splurge kind of pot. Just whatever you can think of to kind of celebrate your successes, I think is helpful too.
Absolutely. Well, certainly good advice, and people should check out Ann's column in the Wall Street Journal. She writes a column regularly. But Ann, always a pleasure speaking with you. Thanks so much for your contribution, and we'll talk to you again very soon.
Great. Thanks so much.
And that wraps up this episode of BRN AM. Hope you found it educational and enjoyable. Hey, have a financial topic or someone of interest that you think we should talk to? Drop us a line. And don't forget, for all the news in retirement, markets, technology, personal finance, and so much more, check out today's edition of The Morning Pulse. So until tomorrow, I'm Jeff Snyder. Keep on saving, and don't forget, roll with the changes.
The same